I'd like to welcome everyone who's gathered here in our webinar to a continued discussion on how environmental, social, and governance ESG strategies create resilience and sustainability in real estate. And this is a continuing discussion from last month where we dove into the nascence of what ESG is and what it means. And we frankly ran out of time, and we thought we'd just continue a deep dive into some of the other issues and topics surrounding ESG. But first, I want to introduce myself. I am Loretta Thompson, and I'm a partner at Greenspoon Martyr in the real estate group. And we're so pleased to be hosting this webinar today and thrilled that we have once again our two esteemed panelists, Lindsay Clark and Mary Tressel. I want to say a few words about each of them because they have notable backgrounds and experience in ESG. Lindsay is an ESG consultant with over 15 years of experience in marketing and sustainable development. She currently serves as the communications manager for Verdanis Partners, which is a full-service sustainability consulting firm based in San Diego. Lindsay supports Verdanis' corporate sustainability department and writes the annual ESG reports for clients, as well as manages their internal communications program. She launched her career by co-founding the University of Utah Office of Sustainability, creating the first department of its kind within the Intermountain West in 2006. She then pursued a master's degree in urban planning from the University of British Columbia, where she worked collaboratively to form the Healing Cities Institute that developed planning approaches to restoring wellness to cities. Since graduating, she has served as a consultant and marketing director within the high-performance building industry, with a specialty in energy efficiency and building information management systems and ESG communications. I want to welcome her here. Thank you for joining us, Lindsay. Mary Tressel is a strategic leader and team building, and she is focused on Armanino, a nationally recognized accounting firm, their purpose to be the most innovative and entrepreneurial accounting firm that makes a positive impact on the lives of clients, people, and communities. She co-created the Armanino Foundation with Andy Armanino to empower the firm's team through innovative corporate social responsibility initiatives, such as volunteer vacations, financial literacy training, and virtual volunteering. Mary successfully led Armanino's BCorp certification journey to join an elite group of accounting and consulting firms who balance profits with purpose. Thank you, Mary, for being here again and for your time and expertise. That said, I just want a quick note, ESG, where we left off. And if you were at our last webinar, Mary talked extensively about the certification, the B certification. And we're going to go into a couple of different topics outside of that. But if you'll remember, we started with ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it was a term coined in the mid-2000s. It's basically an ancient philosophy that's been around for 3,500 years. And it's really, it's commonly referred to as impact investing. And that really hit its stride in the 1960s, where investors started excluding stocks and other industry purchases from their portfolios based upon business activities, such as tobacco production or gambling, or involvement in certain companies and oppressive political regimes. So what has come to happen in the last 30 years is all of those impact investing ideas, issues, important features have been applied to the real estate sector. And especially with respect to the growing and very well-established sustainability movement worldwide that's been going on for some time in making our real estate more resilient, more sustainable, and absolutely, upholding all of the tenets of the Global Sustainable Investment Alliance, which was a consortium of investment organizations, and that was something established in 2012. So now we have sustainability that is pervasive in all areas of businesses and real estate. So we're going to pick up with a topic that we talked about briefly, and it was climate risk management and accountability through reporting. And we can't impress upon you enough how important the reporting aspect is, and in getting out the word that your business, your property is engaged wholly in the sustainability effort. And we're going to start our discussion with Lindsay today about discussing climate risk management. Lindsay?
Thank you. That was a great introduction. So really, climate risk management is huge, it's growing in importance, and it's a really big part of ESG. So a comprehensive ESG program for any organization really should address this risk mitigation piece to help really deliver great results over time. So when we look at this diagram here, this kind of maps out a basic resilience process that we would work through with our clients. So this gives you a little bit of insight into what we're talking about when we're actually boots on the ground working with them. So we look first at assessing risk, making a plan, and then implementing these strategies. So we'll talk a little bit more through that as I explain some more context here. So basically, the core components of a resilience program and like the multifaceted nature of what needs to be addressed makes it kind of complex. It does get a bit complicated. But here's a few things that you really need to be thinking about, from a budgeting level on through emergency response plans. There has to be really tactical approaches to make it all work. So when at a high level, what we're thinking about is how to predict the challenges we will face as climate is shifting and we are anticipating how extreme weather events may intensify into the future. Just as an example, right now in the Intermountain West, where I'm currently living, we're going through this crazy drought and heat wave. And so, how are we going to be resilient to that into the future? And we really need to be making plans that actively help us to address that as we move forward. So this is especially true for investors. And I think that this is something that Mary will talk about as well, that on a global scale, investors are really wanting to understand the risks that climate change is going to pose to their investments, and really think about how climate policy will impact prices and costs and demand across the entire economy. And the same is true for insurance companies. They're really paying attention to climate resilience in buildings and what that's going to do to the cost and investment underwriting, part of their puzzle. So really, we're looking at planning for the future when we're thinking about climate risk management. So to give you a little bit more like hands-on sense of how we actually do this, I'm going to walk you through some key things that we do at Verdanis. So we consider the three major types of climate risks. We look at physical, social, and transition risks. And these are things that we are having to sort of discover anew after about 10,000 years of being relatively comfortable in our Earth climate. Things are changing, things are adopting, we are having to adapt to these new circumstances. So for physical risks, that means things like whatever could disrupt building operations. So we're thinking about, okay, if there's extreme weather events, is your building in a flood zone? Is it going to be impacted by sea level rise? Are there wildfire impacts? So those are kind of more the physical side. The social risks are looking at things like, how do we make buildings that are safe for occupants, especially in stressed circumstances? So do we have an emergency response program in place? For example, if a building had to be evacuated, would people know where to go? Would they know what to do? We're also thinking about health, safety, and well-being, and I know we'll talk more about that in terms of the pandemic impact and how we've been really rethinking how buildings can be healthier and even protect our health when we're inside them. So the social side is the people side of risk. And then finally, transition risks. So this is looking at things like changes in energy sources or the shifts in costs of energies and new reporting laws. So really, when we look at resilience planning, this is a really, really important part of the puzzle when we're addressing climate change and mitigating the future impacts to our buildings. So when we look at this diagram, I just want to give you a little bit more insight here. We really start first with assessing the risk and the vulnerability. So we really want to have a clear picture of what we're dealing with. So we do these really detailed risk assessments, and we have about 55 plus indicators that we work with to help break down where they could be vulnerable and where we need to help improve their resilience. So, and then in addition to that, we look at assessments for high risk assets. So what assets and where are they on the map that need to be cared for in great detail? So especially buildings that are in flood zones, for example. And I'll actually give you an example towards the end of the presentation about how we did that and how it kind of improves results in a crisis. And then when we look at the middle there, we're looking at strategies to help educate key stakeholders on emergency preparedness. So that would be things like helping the tenants to understand what their risks are and what do they do in terms of a crisis. And then finally, we're looking at emergency preparedness on an ongoing basis and then reporting. And I know we'll talk more about this in a little bit here, but the GRESB resilience module is a great example of this reporting that specifically looks at these issues. And also, there's an accountability piece with the annual reports that these companies prepare every single year, where we talk about, what are you currently doing? How are you doing on, major events that have happened recently? And so it kind of provides a sense of transparency and accountability year to year. So really, in its essence, having a resilience program is a competitive advantage because it really does make you more prepared. When these risks arrive, you have a plan in place and you can respond.
Right. Thank you. That was really detailed and very informative, and that dovetails into what I think Mary's going to talk about next, which is all the reporting agencies that she's had experience with, and give us a deeper dive into that and some commentary on both the social and economic impact. Mary?
Exactly. Thank you, Loretta and Lindsay. Yes, so there are dozens of reporting agencies and requirements out there to assess ESG performance. And I think that's part of the challenge of the market right now. There are so many rating agencies that it's hard for businesses and investors to know which one to focus on, which one to make sure that is part of your portfolio if you're investing. But GRESB, GRI, and LEED are really the leaders in the real estate industry. Those are the indices and reports that real estate investors care about. And we'll see that 70% of institutional real estate investors have some explicit ESG policies in place. And almost all who responded to a survey by Peer ESG said that they are using ESG as principles for how they shape their investment decisions, whether they have an actual policy in place or not. But those investors are not just concerned about if you're prepared for climate change and working to protect the environment where your real estate assets are located. They also want to know that you're protecting your clients or your tenants, pardon me, from other threats. For instance, in 2016, in the winter of 2016, there was a cyber attack on the building automation system of 2 apartment buildings in Finland, and the residents were then left without heat for several days until the cyber attack could be addressed. So I've always lived in California. I cannot imagine how cold it was in Finland without their heaters. But these are the types of things that investors and your insurance adjusters want to know that you are prepared for and you have plans for and you can mitigate. So it's not, again, just the environment. It's your kind of your business sustainability and resilience as well. So you should really take a holistic risk assessment approach. I love Lindsay's model here. And you should be looking at your entire business in this manner to get the best investment return that you can.
Just a question about how does Armanino make its clients aware of all of this? What are they doing to, I know what Verdanis is doing, and Lindsay can talk a little bit more. They're just clearly the leaders in consulting on sustainability. But how is Armanino helping people, and where do you fit in, and what do your clients want out of this?
Sure, Loretta. So part of what we do, we have a multitude of services at Armanino. We call it sometimes a menu, but we do provide cybersecurity assessments and help people to strengthen their cybersecurity for their companies. But we've got an internal audit team. So as Lindsay and other consultants are putting together ESG reports, our internal auditors can come and help you verify. That's very important, particularly for public companies, to have yet another set of eyes on that data and to verify its accuracy. Another big part of what we provide is we have a strategy and transformation team. So you can be working with Lindsay and putting together plans, but if you need technology solutions to be able to deliver the goals that you've set for yourself, we can provide kind of a roadmap, a technology roadmap that can help you. So we have a strategy and transformation team that supports that. And then finally, unlike any other accounting firms, I think, in the world, we actually have a marketing and advertising agency that is a division of Armanino. So again, I know that Verdanis helps put together communications pieces for their clients. But if we've got a client and they're working with us, we can also help them on their internal comms or their branding around ESG and help them build out that program. So we kind of have a wide breadth, Loretta. So I think if somebody has a question, we'll be able to, if we don't have the answer, we've got a partner like Verdanis that we can refer them to.
Right. Okay. That's wonderful. Thank you. The next item we'll talk about, Lindsay will pick up more about what's GRESB all about. It's really important organization and how they make their benchmarking model work and against other peers. And I think we have a slide there called the real estate assessment structure. And Lindsay, why don't you take it from there?
Sure. So, building on what Mary's saying is that this reporting aspect is really, really important because not only does it help to provide some kind of transparency, there's also kind of this friendly competition that happens among peers globally. So GRESB is actually a global ESG benchmark. It's based in the Netherlands, and they have an incredible team over there. And they're always improving this benchmark every year. So what you see on the screen shows on the left 2 columns, this is the real estate assessment, and then the sort of middle and right are the development assessment. So that is for like new buildings and major renovations. The other one's for standing investments. So most of what we do is on the left side, the real estate assessment. And so we help our clients to go through the nitty-gritty of reporting on every single one of these items. And it is detailed. It really comprehensively covers environmental, social, and governance in excruciating detail. You have to have really good records and really be on top of it. And year to year, you really can improve. And so it's fun to see clients, maybe their first year wasn't so great, but if they really get their programs tightened up, they can actually perform quite well. And so this gives you an overarching sense of what's included. But, in the context of resilience, they actually have a GRESB resilience module. And that was launched in 2018. And so that's a way to really evaluate how are they doing? And that will help investors and fund managers to really see what they're considering and what they're doing. And so we've actually had quite good performance among our clients on these modules. And we've had some top global rankings over the last 3 years. And so we're proud of that. 23 out of our 31 funds ranked #1 on resilience. So that means that basically we're ticking all the boxes. They have all those resilience measures in place. So, just interesting to note that this is becoming more standardized and integrated. So the resilience module has been optional until now. And now in the 2021 assessment, they're actually going to pull it in to the core framework. So that means that it is now going to be mandatory. It will not be scored in 2021, but going future years, it will be. So organizations really need to be prepared and have resilience very much on their mind. The reason why they're integrating it is partly to be better aligned with other industry frameworks such as TCFD. So this is something that really looks at physical and transition risks. And so the module really is aligned with how they also talk about those same issues. Important to note that they did not include the social risks. And at Verdani, we kind of have a different view on that. We're a very touchy-feely, people-oriented organization. And I think the pandemic has really showed us that, you know, people and human health and well-being is a very important part of the puzzle. And so, you know, we kind of keep the health and well-being, healthy buildings, stakeholder engagement, and organizational resilience. We keep all that in our plans, but we understand, you know, why they do want that kind of bigger alignment. So, you know, this benchmarking really does hold a lot of sway in the industry. It's not just like oh, that's kind of an optional thing. It's really becoming more necessary. And if you're not participating, you're kind of behind the curve now. Organizations that have already been doing this for years are just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And so people who are late to the game are really struggling to catch up. And so, you know, jump in now if you're not already in there. But be warned, I mean, this kind of reporting can take up to about 40% of a full-time employee's time. It is really demanding. And that's why people end up hiring folks like us, because they're like, will you please help us? This is really complicated. So, you know, it's very time intensive, but it's well worth the reward.
So that brings me to my practical question, which is, can anyone see any company's net results of their reporting requirements? Is that disclosed? Is it public? How do people see how a company is performing on benchmarking and the tools they're using to make that benchmarking work?
Yeah, you know, I know that every year they do announce how everyone ranked, and I'm not sure about how transparent the actual scores are, but you can see pretty clearly who's the leaders. So,
and so they take it as a marketing approach. Do you get a sticker for your building? Do you get a certificate, something that you can put on a website, something official that says, yes, we have mandated and met most of the standards?
Yes, yes, people definitely market their results, and they actually receive a certain number of green stars, GRES green stars, and they'll market those, and they have logos that show, you know, your performance. And they also do awards ceremonies, and so they really celebrate the folks who have landed at the top, and there's regional leaders as well. So there is a lot of positive reward and positive reinforcement for those who are at the top. And so it provides just even that much more of a friendly competition, like wanting to get to that top position.
Right, right.
And they make it
Mary,
harder.
you have a lot of experience with this as well, Mary, right?
With the B Corp, it's a very similar process, exactly.
Yes.
And they have a best of the best. You know, we just got certified this year, but I know they have best of the best in many different categories with B Corp, and do an awards program through that as well.
Well, maybe for people who weren't with us last time, it'd be a good idea to just recap the B Corp certification. How's that?
Sure. Yes, and actually B Corp covers all industries except for nonprofits. They do not rank nonprofits, but you can be you know, a clothing manufacturer, you can be a bank, an accounting firm, a medical device company. All corporate entities are included in the opportunity. So to give context, 50,000 companies across the globe have taken the B Corp assessment, but only 4,000 have actually gotten certified. So that tells you how stringent it is. Lindsay's not kidding about the amount of time it takes to respond to the detailed questions that are asked. And in B Corps, they focus on 5 areas. They focus on governance, just like the G of ESG. They focus on your workers, the community, your customers, and the environment. And so they have a list of over 200 very detailed questions that you provide substantiating documentation to prove that you are, as you mentioned in the beginning, Loretta, balancing your purpose and your profits, and you really have a stakeholder engagement model.
Right. I mean, you also have some experience with some other reporting standards. Why don't we talk about the IFRS and some of the other things you've seen?
Exactly. So I think Lindsay is right, and that it's a friendly competition, a race to the top, right? We want people to race to the top, but that transparency is soon going to be required. Last week, the House of Representatives passed, it's called the Corporate Governance Improvement and Investor Protection Act. So they were defining ESG metrics and reporting requirements for public companies. And the new SEC board chairman, Gary Gensler, has said that ESG reporting requirements is at the top of his agenda. And there are predictions that the International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS, and the Sustainable Accounting Standards boards, they have merged, and that they will be coming out with recommendations as soon as this fall, and that the SEC will adopt those. So this is all because investors are clamoring for this transparency and for kind of equal reporting, because right now a lot of greenwashing can occur. A company can appear to be more sustainable and more committed to the environment and social issues than they actually are, because there just aren't rules around it. So I think if you're not in the game, as Lindsay says, if you're not there yet, in addition to wanting to get there to improve for the best, you really just kind of need to be prepared. And so what we're seeing is that tenants and commercial and residential are demanding the information. And when we went through the B Corp process, we reached out to our landlords, but they weren't able to give us the detailed reporting we needed to score a little higher in the environmental categories. So we are going to continue working with our landlords to try and get that greenhouse gas emission information that we need. So lastly, I would just want to say that really kind of the best of the best is an integrated reporting approach, where you're pulling all the data and you've got it in a database where it can be accessed at any time, because sometimes you need things in a hurry. Maybe a tenant is requiring this much, this piece of information, or they won't sign the lease, that type of thing. So if you've got an integrated reporting system, and you're putting out your citizenship reports, like Lindsay was talking, the annual reports every year, then you're going to have the information at your fingertips that you need to kind of allay fears of a potential tenant, or prove to the potential investors that you are a good risk to take. So I think that's the best way to approach it, is that you really want to, that, as Lindsay says, that employee that spends 40% of their time, or the consultant that you work with, make sure they do a comprehensive job and they make you ready to be able to report to all the different organizations, GRESB, SASB, GRE, LEED, the alphabet soup that we have right now.
Right. That's excellent. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a slight shift, and Lindsay mentioned this in the last module about the health and well-being certifications, and these are the S in the ESG, and it doesn't necessarily, these are things that are outside of the GRESB and some of the more formal reporting, and Lindsay mentioned that, and Verdanis is really taken the lead in this approach and all of the things that are important for well-being certifications. And so I'll let her talk about all the viral response modules and the different certifications, about what is available and why it matters.
Sure, thank you. So yes, we have actually a certifications team as part of our Verdanis Partners organization. So we have experts who help our clients get these certifications, and we do lots of work with LEED and Energy Star and Fitwel, for example. So, lots of, about 10 years of doing this. So the pandemic has really changed the conversation overnight around what's important, and health and well-being quickly rose to the top. And so in the past, and I know we've talked about this before, but the idea that sustainability was really more about the environmental piece of the puzzle, because it seemed sort of more measurable and tangible and impactful, whereas the social side, it just kind of seemed like a nice to have. But that conversation has really changed. The pandemic has really brought to light just how critical occupant safety, health, and well-being are, and essential for business, actually. You need people in those buildings, and so you need them to be well. And so there are two certifications that I'll talk to you about. First, we'll talk about the Fitwel Viral Response module, and then I'll tell you about the new Well module as also. So this module, as you can see on the screen, you can see some of these details here. This is actually all about just maximizing the health benefits for occupants. And it was created originally by the CDC. Fitwell itself was created by the CDC and the US General Services Administration. This was very much a health-oriented initiative to make our buildings more, human focused, and way before the pandemic arrived. But this specific viral module helps to prevent this spread of infectious diseases within buildings. So very much about protecting your occupants and helping them to feel safe to come back. And that's a big motivator for why a lot of people are still looking at these, even now that the vaccines have arrived, they still want to make sure that people feel safe coming back. So if you get this kind of certification, you're going to have to really look at how you enhance the indoor environment, how you encourage behavioral change among tenants, so making sure they're following the rules that you've got, and then building occupant trust so that they're feeling safe in the building. So you do this in a variety of ways. Namely, I think some of the things that are easier to grab onto is like indoor air quality. Do you have the right kinds of filters in your systems to actually filter out that particulate matter? You're not spreading around the virus across levels of the building. Do you have the right cleaning protocols with good actual substances that aren't making people more sick? Are you, green cleaning, for example? Do you have personal protective equipment guidelines? Now that's sort of changing, I know, with like different mask mandates in different states, all kind of in flux. But I think we're going to see these kind of same sensitivity around cleaning and washing hands and that kind of thing. And finally, things like disease outbreak preparedness plans, because what if it happens again? Really don't want to think about that. But, pandemics are apparently global now. We really need to be very, very prepared. So should this come about again, these kinds of certifications help people to be prepared. So now let's go to the next slide where we look at the WELL health and safety rating. So this one is similar but different. This one is a standalone certification that you can get in addition to the comprehensive WELL rating. And the WELL rating itself is a really fun one. It is very strict, extremely hard to get accredited as a professional, as well as to achieve the certification, because it is very strict, and it's become very prestigious. And I remember this marketing campaign that WELL put out towards the beginning of the pandemic, and they had like Jennifer Lopez and various celebrities talking about how the WELL standard helps, when they see that symbol on the window, that helps give them more confidence that their favorite places to go are going to be a safe place, that they know that it's living up to certain criteria. And they've had just a massively successful rise in certifications for WELL itself over the pandemic, because it covers all these issues. And so one interesting thing to note is that you can do this health and safety rating as a standalone rating. You don't actually have to do the whole comprehensive WELL rating, so it's kind of attractive in that sense. But if you actually already did the full WELL rating, it really will cover a lot of these viral issues. So either way, you're going to be in really good shape if you have one or the other. If you have both, even better. But really, you're looking at this one in terms of operational policies, maintenance protocols, and emergency planning. So it's, talking to our certifications team, like, do you think these kinds of things will stick around? That people are sort of feeling more safe, masks are off in a lot of places. Is this going to be still necessary? And I think the answer is yes. We're still seeing that people want to demonstrate that they are being proactive, that their buildings are safe places, that they are being really smart about planning for the future, and will continue to support human health and well-being.
Just a question, again, back to the practical side. What kind of industries are asking for these, your help with these WELL certifications? Because they obviously would need someone with a lot of expertise to get through the process. What industries do you see?
Sure. Well, we primarily work with large real estate portfolios, and that can include everything from office buildings to hotels to malls. So you have a wide variety of building types within that. But I know that we also do get some folks who are not our clients who approach us just for the certifications work. So because it is detailed, and sometimes you really just do want someone to hold your hand as you're going through it, because these people have accreditations, they have the training, and they know how to get you through it.
And like GRESB and all the other certifications, LEED and all that, do they also market the companies that are complying with their standards? Do they also have that shout out component?
Yes, I think these standards want to make it really easy for people who have done the certification to demonstrate it, to make it visible, make it obvious. So a lot of people will have these on their lobby doors. So as you're walking through the door, you're going to see a sticker or a plaque right, on the window or with the one next to you. And that's what you see all over the place in New York City right now. A lot of these well buildings that are certified, they are making it visible, and it's a mark of prestige. And so I think there's that piece, and then of course just huge marketing bonus, and especially for investors, people who are looking for the kinds of properties they want to invest in. I mean, we know that having a LEED certification increases the value of a building. So
we're going to turn to that now with Mary. Let's go on the investment and whether or not it's measurable, and Mary's going to talk to that.
Yeah, so there is definitely an ROI to these investments that you're making into the health of your building. You're making them into the health of your business. So there's Just Capital, and they have a large cap diversified index where they're tracking large companies who have very positive, high ESG scores. And their index has outperformed the Russell 1000 over the last 3 years. So I think a while ago, people felt like investing in sustainable companies, you would take a hit on your investment. You wouldn't quite make as much on your portfolio, but that's actually not true. What we're seeing is that companies that have the forethought, that are doing the risk assessments that we've talked about, are performing better in the market. So definitely, I suggest to continue to follow the ESG ratings when you're doing your own investing, and seek high scores for your own portfolios. But the other thing on a practical, kind of every day, we've heard so much about how tight the housing market is. But what we're seeing is that millennials really want to purchase homes that are sustainable. So the developer 5 Point created this 21,000 unit housing tract in Valencia, California, and completely sold out because it has a net zero impact on the environment. They do that by purchasing carbon offsets, but also by a lot of the, solar energy and alternative energy ways that they can make those houses sustainable for the future. And they're working with names, KB Homes, Lennar, Toll Brothers, and Tri Point. So they spent tens of millions of dollars on the carbon offsets to be able to market these homes in this manner. And they're seeing it pay off because they've sold the entire development out. And I also would say, organizations need to address the E, S, and G, all factors, because of the tight labor market that we are in as well. So 90% of Gen Z companies believe companies should be helping when it comes to the environment and social impact issues. And 64% of millennials won't take a job with an employer unless they have a strong ESG policy. So you really got to be thinking about your brand, not just in terms of your potential clients, but also in terms of marketing yourself to the labor market. If you want to hire the best and the brightest, you've got to be shining in this area and have a strong ESG record yourself.
That's fascinating. It's a great point that you raise. I was actually just reading in Dwell about a couple of students who couldn't find the right company to work for after their architecture school and all their licensing, and they developed a company that does accessory dwelling units. They build them, retrofit them, make them if necessary, and they are all based on ESG policies, all LEED certified. And that is another way of approaching the housing crisis and the employment pool issue. And this company will explode in growth because people want to add those accessory dwellings to their homes, either for their own family or to rent out as they try and finance their children's educations in college. So that is just another example that's brand new that just came out in the Dwell magazine, and I was thrilled to see someone on the forefront of that.
I also saw a headline that green renovations is the wave of our future too. That's how we can create a more equitable society, is if we go back and renovate the homes that need to be rehabilitated, but do it in a sustainable manner. That is going to bring about great kind of equity in our society. So I agree. That's great.
Okay. Now, the last module that we're going to talk about for today is also in the social sector. It's about how buildings foster immunity and promote resilience. And, you know, and this is something that is just a deeper dive into what we've already been talking about. But we're going to look at what does it mean for tenants and owners, and how the pandemic is changing how we live and operate in buildings. Mary, I think you were going to talk a little bit first about this.
Actually, we've got Lindsay's slide up, so I'll go up after her.
Okay, so we've got Lindsay's slide up. Okay, great. Lindsay, why don't you start with your experience?
Sure. So I'm going to tell you a little story about Parkway and Hurricane Harvey. And before I do that, I want to sort of set the stage a little bit, because when, like, a technical definition for resilience is the capacity to prepare for disruptions, recover from shocks and stresses, and adapt and grow from that disruptive experience. So, all right, how do we truly understand the risks that we're facing and actually prepare to mitigate them? And I think that this property is a great example of just that. In 2017, category 3 or 4, big hurricane hit the Houston metropolitan area. And so we have a client named Parkway with a big office property right in the downtown core. And what's amazing is that because they had incredible resilience plans already in place, they were prepared and they were able to mobilize quickly. And you can see on the slide, the bottom right and the top right, these are floodgates. So they actually block the water flooded towards your building. And then you see sort of one column over, you see these pumps that they were running. So just pumping out this water and basically protecting their asset. And what was amazing was they had these teams on site. You see that in the kind of the second to the left column, where you have the personnel out there in coats and boots and monitoring the situation, monitoring water levels. And then you also see that there are spaces in the building dedicated for the employees to rest and recuperate and sort of take turns with their shifts. So, you know, the takeaway message from this one is that in the region, there were $125 billion worth of damages. Parkway didn't have a single insurance claim. That's incredible because they were prepared. And so, you know, this kind of level of having your action plans, having done drills in the past, knowing how to actually deploy and manage a crisis situation, it's such good business. It really is something that we're going to have to get used to, because climate change is increasing the frequency and severity of severe storms. It's increasing the challenges that we're facing. And I think we really started to see that in 2020. You know, this was the beginning of a changing world. And I think that, you know, you have to really think about these things from a very practical business standpoint. This is a necessary function to be part of your business plan, to be part of your operational plan, and also to be caring for your people, your tenants, and your engaging folks. And I just wanted to mention quickly, there was a power outage in New York City years ago that was about 5 days, and a lot of buildings did not have power at all. And this one client actually had sort of their staff stranded there in the building for about 5 days. There's no water, there's no like places to sleep, there's no extra, you know, facilities. So that was a big learning experience for them, and have since implemented things like what Parkway has here, which is, you know, facilities for staff, so that you can actually take care of the building. And then that building can be a hub of taking care of people in the surrounding areas, because they could come there and maybe they have their generators in place, they could come charge their cell phones, things like that. So we need to think about buildings in a more dynamic way that really accounts for a changing world and changing circumstances.
Absolutely. And to cap that off, Mary has a heartwarming story, and then we can go through some questions and answers. I'm receiving a bunch of questions now. So Mary, why don't you dive into that?
Thank you, Loretta. So what you're seeing on the screen here is actually this very same hurricane, Hurricane Harvey, that Lindsay was talking about. As you know, it devastated a lot of homes at that time too, and FEMA came in and provided funds for people to rebuild their homes. So this is the home of a grandmother. She bought this home on her own, single mom, years and years before, and she had 3 generations living in the house, and it was devastated by Hurricane Harvey. So she got her FEMA funds. She hired a contractor. The contractor came one day, took the money and left town. And so she was without any means to repair this home that she had worked so hard to buy years and years before. So Armanino, we found this group called SBP USA, and they do, as I was talking about earlier, this renovation and rehabilitation of homes that are damaged in natural disasters. So we had a team and we worked with 2 AmeriCorps volunteers. It was really great. These young ladies are just college age, and they were telling us how to use the power tools and how to lay floating floors. Nobody on our team had ever laid a floating floor, but by the end, we all knew how to do it, and paint. And so we went in there about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and we were putting some of the final touches on, and the SBP USA team, they were able to get the grandmother and her family back in the home for Thanksgiving that year. So it was really, really impressive. It gave our team this feeling of, we are more than accountants. We are giving back, to our communities. We're making a difference. And we had some bring loved ones. There was a husband and wife team, and they laid flooring. I said to them, if you guys can be in this room together and lay the flooring, this is a strong testament to your marriage. But it was absolutely the best way that we thought we could give back. And the homeowner was delighted to be there for Thanksgiving with her family.
That's a great story and a great ending to a fantastic module, and what all this means to the people that are experiencing the losses, and the companies that are out there to assist them and help them through those challenges, and also be agents of change in the whole atmosphere and environment. We have a couple of questions that came. The first one is from one of our attendees, Anonymous, and they ask, what are some of the biggest challenges that pose a threat to an organization's sustainability plan? You want to start with that? Maybe both of you talk about it, but Lindsay, what have you seen?
Oh, give me a minute. How about Mary, you go first?
I was actually thinking the biggest challenge is starting and creating the plan. I think, to me, it's the overwhelming nature that, as Lindsay said, there's so many questions that are being asked, so much detailed information is required. I think a lot of companies let them stay paused for a while and not address it. But for Armanino, when we started the BCorp process, it was really, we kind of knew internally that we were in the business of creating this positive impact. But by going through that process, and again, seeing the stringent requirements there are, it gave us so much more to be proud about, that we were able to complete that certification program and verify all of our answers and know that we can stand on this statement that we are certified. So I think there's a great outcome to be had. And as Lindsay was talking too about, maybe the first year your score is not so good, then you set goals and you improve for the next year, and that has an incredible positive impact on your team that's working on it and the rest of the company, and then your clients. I think that's what I would say would be the big challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one of the challenges in the past has been a lack of consensus around sustainability or ESG being important. And so you might have one sort of sustainability officer who's buried down within the levels of an organization and can't actually leverage the programs and initiatives that they need to be able to do, because it crosses so many silos, right? It really has a piece that touches every part of the organization. So I think, if you can surmount that challenge of getting the leadership really bought in at a high level, that gives the person the ability, or the team really, because you're starting to see sort of ESG directors, global head of ESG type titles emerging. And what's exciting about that is because you're seeing that organizations are elevating that role, and they're putting resources towards it, and they're hiring experts who know how to do it. One of the challenges is there's a shortage of experts. There needs to be about 80,000 more of us than there are. So we're, I think that's a big challenge too, is the knowledge base. But, I will say that, this huge demand that we're seeing in the market is fueling much more investment in this. And I think we're going to see some wonderful programs and technologies and processes across the board, like with teams like Armanino, who are really jumping on and taking it on in a really big way. I am so happy to hear that, because I think that we are ready for the next jump in how we do business. And this is a big part of it.
And Lindsay, why don't we underscore that by you talking about Verdanis' growth since its inception?
Yes. We started as a really small team. It was really Danielle Horton who had a vision, and she had left her full-time job as, corporate head of sustainability, and said, I'll just kind of start doing this as a consultant. And she's grown the team now to over 40 people. And we have a communications department, we have a certifications department, engineering and technical services, as well as corporate sustainability. So all of our teams and operations. So we all collectively work together to make this thing work. And I mean, just the demand is out of control. I mean, we have another client who just signed on for this summer. We sort of can't scale fast enough. And we're trying to find people who have enough years of experience in it, but they're already sort of being poached by other people. So it's really, it's really interesting, this scramble to have the right people in place to do this work. But I see that as just a good thing. I'm so glad that the market is ready for ESG. And ready
Absolutely. And we have one more anonymous question that goes, have you seen businesses face issues and getting their employees to buy in and engage on sustainability initiatives?
So I'll just, from the Armanino perspective, we have what we call a staff advisory board. So in the S of the ESG, our managing director over 10 years ago, I think it was actually 15 years ago, started the staff advisory board, really thinking, not all the answers come from the top in an organization that is growing like ours is. And when we floated the idea to the staff advisory board that, hey, Armanino is going to seek B Corp certification, you should have seen the eyes light up, the heads nod, the how can I get involved? It was amazing. And so we celebrated Earth Day this year by doing a B Corp, kind of what is B Corp for our firm. And about 65% of people didn't know what it was before that meeting, but we got such great questions and participation, and we got people to pledge. People made their own pledges about how they were going to use reusable water bottles, or be careful around energy in their household, or reduce, reuse, recycle. So we just saw it as a great catalyst to get people involved, and I bet Lindsay has seen that in her clients.
Yeah, we have. I agree. I would say it's kind of rare right now to hear about someone who just really doesn't want to recycle or doesn't really want to participate. We have tenant engagement programs that we do that help raise awareness around energy, water, waste, emissions, and then health and well-being. And we're expanding that every year now to have more social themes as well. And we do see a lot of enthusiasm around it. I think part of the challenge is when you make it really hard to do something good, people won't do it, right? But if you can get the systems and the processes in place so that people can make the right choice easily, that's the sweet spot. And it's like when someone doesn't want to go to a website that makes them feel stupid, right? Like, make it easy to navigate, make it easy to provide and do the right thing. And so that's a lot of what these companies need to figure out, if they are getting a lot of pushback, why? Maybe it's too hard.
Right. Some of the pushback I used to receive was that tenants were embarrassed by their energy usage and did not want to disclose it. And then that goes back to the investment in lighting fixtures and retrofitting and the whole thing. So, that wasn't too long ago where there was great resistance statewide in California to reporting your benchmarking. So that's starting to crack open now when people see it affects their bottom lines as tenants, wellness of their employees. Everything is impacted by reporting and understanding what your energy usage is and how you can curtail it and channel it into something that everyone is invested in helping. So that has changed substantially. I want to thank everyone. It's the end of our questions. I don't think we have any others, but I really want to thank both Lindsay and Mary coming on once again to do an extended webinar on ESG principles. We thought it was really important to do this deeper dive and to really get it out there about how important these initiatives are. And I do hope that we're going to have continued programs with them both, because this is a very important subject. It's on everyone's minds and it's on everyone's plates and financial statements. So let's just keep talking about it and talk with the experts. And thank you to Green Spoon Martyr for sponsoring it. And I appreciate everyone's attendance. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.